afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. It's great to be having, I think it's our last attire seminar before we go on a very short break, because next week is short break, which is the graduation week. I think the second graduation in the year, and we're having lots of people graduating at different levels. So it's a bumper harvest this year, and we're always excited when we send people into how do you say, into the academic world. Of course, we know that there are lots of bachelor's degrees, honors degrees, master's degrees that we are excited for, but we in this space, we're very excited about doctoral degrees because they move on to tertiary, and we hope that they get into the field to transform both the field and the way also academic work works. So to these people, we send them our congratulations. So next week, there will be no seminar, and also we are on break next week. Doesn't mean that there's no activity here, it just means that formally we are not here. And when you come and you see lots of people moving around, don't be shocked because families and lots of other people will be coming up and down. So if you have any anxiety, just be warned that you might just find some strange people in your room, in your office, because people are coming from across the country and across the world excited about graduation and also lost. So that's it. But we thank also colleagues, Fanit and Abuna, who are supporting us with organizing this seminar, because our other colleagues are also on break and holiday. That's Bilan and Amina. So thank you very much for that. So today we have our friend and colleague, Yousra Hamdaoui, who is coming from Université Hassan de Casablanca. Sometimes I make a mistake with Rabat, but Casablanca is not Rabat. It's those are two different spaces. It's like being in Lagos and going to Simon Town. Yeah, those are two different places. So it's indeed Casablanca is like small Lagos. So, and those people will not be happy if you conflict it with Rabat. Because Rabat is very calm, you know. So, yeah. So she's coming to us from Université Hassan de Casablanca, and I've known Yousra since Senegal, and Yousra is currently a visiting fellow within the Carnegie-funded AI Africa AI Ethics Initiative, but she has also previously been a postdoc. And one of the, I think, biggest projects or largest studies on academic, on scholarly publishing in Africa. It was a study that was funded by the Open Society Foundation. Actually, we still have to close that project. And it's a comparative project across all the African countries, just looking at the state of knowledge production, the state of scholarly publishing, because at the time we wanted to understand this infrastructure and how to reform it and how to make sure that, in this case, Africa's voice and Africa's knowledge production is visible. Because if you recall, there was a time when Elsevier and others published that Africa contributed less than 1% to global science knowledge production. And we wanted to understand why this was the case. And in fact, 80 or 90% of that less than 1% was coming from South Africa. So the rest of the continent actually did not actually exist, and particularly French colonized Africa did not even show up or pitch up, you know, in this contribution. So it was important just to understand the state of knowledge production, what it was. So Yousra was working in both Francophone speaking and also Arabophone speaking countries and to do that. So it's great to have Yousra back, from this space and how work now is around AI and publishing and really looking at how editors perceive its impacts on ethical policies and authority and governance, and which is an issue that she's worked on before because her work has really been around security issues, counter-terrorism and violent extremism, and questions around soft power, but she's done a lot of work on the Sahel in particular, and also particularly worked in Morocco and also in Senegal before. And you have many other fellowships, including Mellon and also Academic Freedom before. But today, Yousra is speaking to us on the theme editorial governance and the use of AI in African scholarly publishing, which is something she's been working on before she came, but also for the time that Yousra has been here conducting interviews and speaking with other people and writing. And we are looking forward to listening to Yousra and then to engage in a very, enriching conversation.
Thank you, Divine, for this introduction. And thank you, dear colleagues, for being here. So my interest in AI in African scholarly publishing grew out of a project that I began with HUMA, as Divine mentioned, in 2021 on African scholarly publishing and dissemination. So this idea of AI popped up when I was reviewing the ethical policies of some peer-reviewed journals. And I remarked that most African journals did not refer to AI in their ethical policies. So there is nothing about the use of AI ethically. So it was this gap, this remark that drew my focus to the ethical debates in scholarly publishing and to the role of editors in this debate. So my research, my research explores how editors of African journals perceive the use of AI in academic publishing, engage in ethical debates around this question, this issue, and define or redefine their editorial authority and role within this evolving context. My investigation will be centered at this stage on 2 countries from each of the 4 African regions. So in North Africa, I will work on Egypt and Morocco, and I will explain later why I choose these countries. In West Africa, Nigeria and Senegal. In East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania. In Southern Africa, South Africa and Botswana. So in light of this, the objectives of this research are the following. The first one, on the perception of the adoption of AI and language models in the African scholarly landscape will enable or help to understand how these journal editors see and make sense of the use of this technology. So from this objective, I will respond to the following question. How do African journal editors perceive the integration of AI-generated tools in scholarly publishing? So the second objective focuses on the limitation of the current editorial policies in African scientific journals that do not define the ethical uses of AI for editors or for reviewers. So it seeks to examine the role of editors in this debate on the ethical use of AI. And I will ask the following question. To what extent are editors considering the ethical use of AI in their editorial policies? Then a third objective, and the last one, on examining editorial authority in this context of AI. So it seeks to understand the role of editors. Third one, yes. The role of editors themselves in this new configuration I mean, how they do define their authority or redefine it within this context. So I will ask the following question. How can African journal editors reclaim editorial authority in a system increasingly shaped by AI-controlled infrastructures? So for this research, I chose carefully I selected these following countries that offer distinct perspectives on the use of AI in scholarly publishing. So these countries differ in level of research infrastructure, language of publication, Arabic, Kiswahili, French, or English, and sometimes Spanish, and degree of access to advanced AI technologies. The chosen countries are as follows. In Northern Africa, Morocco and Egypt, both countries are Arabophone, but in Morocco, scholarly publications are primarily in French and Arabic, with some use of English and Spanish. On the other hand, in Egypt, English and Arabic are the dominant languages of publication. If we look at Egypt, it stands out as one of the major hubs for scholarly publishing and knowledge industry in North Africa. But if we look a bit deeper, we see that university presses, especially those who are, belong to the public sector, they are in decline, which means fewer scholarly publications are being produced. At the same time, Egypt is being Egypt is investing heavily in artificial intelligence, according to the OECD. 7 universities, both private and public, have already established AI faculties. But these universities, they are expanding AI education and research through dedicated faculties, specialized degree programs, research centers, and innovation hubs. In the case of Morocco, the picture is slightly different. Scientific production is relatively scarce. I mean, there is a kind of scarcity, which limits the professionalization and structuring of the publishing sector. University presses struggle with distribution and limited visibility. So we often rely on events like international book fairs, the one who is usually organized in Rabat each year. Morocco also made some progress in AI. We have some universities that are they offer specialized courses on AI, like Mohammed VI Polytechnic University. What is interesting, even if we have this, culture of AI, at the pedagogical level, when we look at the knowledge production, there is no debate on AI, ethically speaking. So I had a look on Egyptian journal platforms, especially the humanities. There are no guidelines for authors, reviewers, or editors on the use of AI. The same in the case of Morocco. I looked on some journals listed on the EMIST platform, and even some journals like Esperis Tamuda, which follows the guidelines, the Committee on Publication Ethics. They made no mention on AI in their ethical policies. So in West Africa, we have another picture. So we look, looking at Senegal and Nigeria. So we see 2 different publishing cultures. So Senegal, as a francophone country, produces most of its scientific work in French. Nigeria, on the other hand, is the an Anglophone country in West Africa, and English dominates its scholarly publishing. Nigeria is also the most prolific scholarly publisher in the region. Nigeria's publishing sector is evolving, especially with more open access initiatives coming up. What's also important to note is that even if there is this, the sector is growing, there is we don't find debates on the ethical use of AI, for example, the institutions like the Nigerian Academy of Science or the Nigerian Academy of Letters, or even when you look at some of the journals they have are on Azure. 341 journals, yes. Most of them still don't have ethical policies regarding AI use. In Senegal, the situation is a bit different. So there is a scarcity also in the production, the scientific production. And also when it comes to the guidelines on the ethical use of AI within this CAMES Express, le Conseil africain et malgache de l'enseignement supérieur, there is no debate about it. So in Eastern Africa, when we look at Kenya and Tanzania, two interesting cases in scholarly publishing. In Kenya, the research and publishing landscape is both complex and quite well developed compared to other countries in the region. The country has a strong academic infrastructure with repositories, journal publishing houses. So, for instance, there are 29 journals listed on Africa Journals Online, Azure, 15 more on university websites, 38 university repositories, and 13 publishing houses, according to our unpublished report on Eastern Africa scholarly publishing and dissemination. Kenyan scholarly journals don't have explicit policies on AI, and editorial guidelines don't include dedicated section addressing its use. There is a kind of similar situation in Tanzania. Universities remain the central hubs of scholarly publishing. Most journals are available in both print and electronic formats, with open access becoming more widespread. There are some kinds of limitations in ICT infrastructure, internet connectivity, and electricity. The Tanzanian system generally favors a kind of hybrid model because of these limitations. So we have print and electronic publishing. So another interesting point is that Tanzania leads the continent in Swahili language or Kiswahili publications, highlighting its unique contribution to Africa's scholarly output. So now if we look at Southern Africa, and South Africa and Botswana, they provide two very different perspectives of scholarly publishing. South Africa hosts the largest publishing industry on the continent, with academic publishing making about 16% of total output. Since 2000, the academic sector in Africa has grown significantly, with South Africa and Nigeria together producing roughly 2/3 of the continent's scholarly output. When it comes to AI, some of the South African journals listed on by the Department of Higher Education and Training accredited journals, they have listed ethics policies both in STEM and humanities. So when we look at these journals, so we will find many journals that already mention the ethical policies of the use of AI. At the institutional level, we have the Academy of Science of South Africa, who endorsed on 17 September 2024, in collaboration with CELU, a set of guidelines that aim to establish standards for authors, editors, and reviewers on the responsible use of AI generated content in scholarly communications. So Botswana, by contrast, has the growing scholarly publishing sector. Research output is important. Open access is expanded as well. But on the ethical part, for example, the Botswana University Journal don't have specific guidelines on the use of AI. So by looking at these contrasting pairs of countries across the four African regions, so we can get unique opportunities to understand the role of editors, how can they contribute to this ethical debate, within these different profiles of African countries. Now let's move to the literature review. I study 4 points or my literature review examines 4 points. The first one is the AI in global publishing in general. The second one is AI in African publishing, the opportunities and challenges. Then editorial authority and agency in the context of AI, and then the key issues from this literature. So, according to Afolabi and Gino, an article they published in 2024, they defined artificial intelligence as a method by which humans train computers to identify existing patterns and recognize new ones. By developing algorithms capable of processing large volumes of data, AI enables computers to detect patterns, generate insights, and support decision-making. So while AI is not entirely new to the publishing industry, its role was historically peripheral, with limited influence on the production and editorial process. And then we have the second, phase, like with the advent of large language models, and particularly ChatGPT in 2022, that accelerated the adoption of AI in academic publishing, where AI now supports writing, editing, and other cognitive tasks traditionally carried out by human experts, according to Stoltenberger and Van Morten, such as also authoring, reviewing, publishing, and dissemination. So scientific writing, though essential for academic and professional advancement, faces increasing pressure from rapid publication demands, raising ethical concerns about the threats posed by AI-assisted technologies to human-centered authorship. So there is the adoption of AI in the publishing has sparked debates over efficiency, quality, and ethics. On the one hand, AI-driven tools are celebrated for increasing productivity and helping, on readability, etc. But also with this ethical concern: how are we going to use them? So the second point of this literature. When we focus on the African context, the literature points both challenges and opportunities of the use of AI in scholarly publishing. So across the African continent, research reveals a growing, though uneven, adoption of AI in publishing. So according to a study done by Salani and Tafuma in 2025, it shows that African scholars and editors increasingly use AI-powered platforms such as ChatGPT and also empowered AI tools for copy editing like Grammarly and Keyboard to support academic writing and editing. In North Africa, for example, we have some studies. In the case of Morocco, there is a study carried by Najari and Famu that explores the use of doctoral and master's students as well as secondary school teachers. While participants acknowledge AI's transformative potential, they raise concerns about training gaps, infrastructural limitations, and ethical dilemmas such as data privacy. In West Africa, we have Onoja, who is emphasizing the AI's capacity to improve writing, editing, and publishing processes. So this opportunity is tempered by the fear also that AI could replace the human, writers, the human creativity. In East Africa, we have Obura and Imoit, who examine the role of AI in academic writing and research skills among Kenyan universities. Their study highlights AI's utility in supporting scholarly work, while also identifying persistent challenges, including plagiarism, misinformation, and limited institutional readiness to integrate these tools effectively. In Botswana, we have a study published by Letsolo Tafila in 2022 on the ethical principles guiding editors and authors of the University of Botswana. University of Botswana journals, it showed strong ethics protocol with no local journal featuring explicit AI-specific guidelines. So the literature, so we talk about the, in this literature, the use of AI in publishing in the African context, the challenges and the opportunities, but we don't have a lot about the role of editors, this discussion of the role of editors, their authority within this context. But there is a debate also on the authority of editors in the mainstream publishing, like without the inclusion of AI. And there is this interesting research by Gatrell and Breslin, published in 2025, that shows that editors have decisive power in peer review, shaping the fate of manuscripts. Their authority comes from institutional history. Sorry, I just need, let's see. Yes, editorial routines and accepted norms. So editors are seen both as powerful figures and as vulnerable to pressures and temptation. Attention that shapes their role. Editors-in-chief, because they are editors-in-chief, both of them. So they did this study starting from their position. Act as guardians of the peer review system, navigating rules, resistance, and institutional pressures while shaping knowledge production. Now, with the rise of generative AI and large language models, so there is a kind of a new layer of complexity adding to this, to this already complex role that editors have. But we don't have many, studies on this. There is a study realized by some editors of the journal, the American Journal of Bioethics and Humanities, that recommend that human accountability and transparency must guide AI-assisted publishing, with editors retaining final responsibility. Similarly, Pervis and al. Note that using AI in peer reviewing can increase editors' workload, especially if they have to verify every AI-generated claim. If we look at Africa, I only found this study in Egypt by Ala al-Alsawi in 2024 that explored how professional editors and proofreaders view AI. So the results reveal a kind of paradox. Editors are both optimistic about AI's potential and concerned about its impact on their profession. The key issues from this literature, so there is excuse me, there is a critical gap in understanding how African editors perceive. We don't see how African editors perceive, ethically integrate, and locally adapt AI in scholarly publishing, with limited comparative research across the continent. So these are mainly the key issues that I saw, or I took from this literature review. So now we move to the methodology of this study. This study adopts a qualitative research design to investigate how journal editors engage with generative AI and large language models in the scholarly publishing system. So the research will explore the journal editors' perceptions, authority, agency, and policy gaps in the use of AI across scholarly publishing process. So I will conduct 16 interviews, which is not the case yet, with editors-in-chief, managing editors, and editorial board members from all the selected African countries. So I will conduct 2 interviews per country. The research will focus on peer-reviewed African journals from humanities, and they will also use data from the grant literature focusing on AI and scholarly publishing in African context, and especially the reports, the grant literature produced by institutions known for promoting, national institutions for promoting scholarly publishing, such as the Academy of Science of South Africa, the Nigerian Academy of Letters, l'Institut Marocain de l'Information Scientifique et Technique in its capacity as a research operator, and le CAMES, le Conseil africain et malgache pour l'enseignement supérieur. Yes. So because my research is at an embryonic stage, so I didn't do the 16 interviews. So I have done 7 interviews with editors from Senegal, Nigeria, South Africa, and Morocco. I can share with you some of the findings of this my interviews. So so the first finding concerning the grey literature that comes from reports of institutions, national institutions that look at research and scholarly publishing. So there is no debate on the ethical use of AI. For example, when you look at CAMES or le CNRST in Morocco, or the Kenyan Academy of Sciences or the Nigerian Academy of Sciences, but there is a debate, and also there is also a kind of there is a report by published on September 2024 by the Academy of Science of South Africa that set some guidelines that aim to establish standards for authors, editors, and reviewers on the responsible use of AI-generated content in scholarly communications. These guidelines offer practical recommendations for updating author instructions and managing editorial processes, while emphasizing that editors must use AI tools responsibly and transparently, uphold ethical standards, ensure quality, and prevent the spread of misinformation in scientific publishing. So when it comes to my interviews, so as I mentioned, I've done 7 interviews with editors from Senegal, Nigeria, Morocco, and South Africa. So some of the editors, they requested anonymity and confidentiality, so I decided not to cite the names of the journals. So I limit the references to the field to which they pertain, and they pertain, almost all of them, to humanities. So so the first, my first interview with an editor from Senegal. So when it comes to perception, he exposes a kind of emerging awareness. The use of AI, there is a kind of awareness, especially when it comes to the integration of AI as a pedagogical tool, you know, in the teaching, and also as a facilitator of research in the whole CAMES espace. So when it comes to the ethical policies, the ethical debates, so there is a kind of conservatism and reluctance within the journal at the micro level of the journal. So, but he mentioned at the same time that there is a kind of there are some institutions like le Curie, le Centre Universitaire de la Recherche et de l'Innovation, that begin to think of how to tackle this issue, like from how to use AI tools to detect the plagiarism done by these technologies. When it comes to the authority, the agency, he expresses a kind of pressure of performance, you know, that editors are facing this pressure now, and that there is a kind of high expectations now that we're waiting from editors with this with the use of AI. So in the case of Nigeria, I have done two interviews with one administrative editor, the humanities, and one founding editor in the field of humanities as well. So when it comes to that reception, the first editor, the administrative editor, he had a mixed perception. Inevitability, like there is this kind of ubiquity of this technology, so we will be using it. So he expressed his worries about inaccuracies, recklessness, and also the risks of to use this this technology. The second one had a positive perception. He considered it as a useful resource. It enables the access to information. But he mentioned also some cautious aspects like over-reliance. When we overuse this tool. When it comes to the ethical policies and the ethical debates, the first editor mentioned that there is a kind of discussions at the journal level, but at the institutional level, there is no debate. There is no national leadership. For example, in the African Council on Education Managerial chapter on the ethical use of AI. The second one also mentioned that there are discussions, like informal discussions, on the ethical use of AI within the journal. Also, the same thing, absence of institutional policy at the level of the Nigerian Academy of Letters. On their authority and agency, so they express there's a kind of limitation. There's more workload because editors have this research integrity pressure, so they have to double check the work that is suspected being plagiarized by AI. The second editor mentioned AI as an assistant, could be an assistant, it could play a complementary role, but also mentioned that we have to supervise, monitor AI. Yeah. In the case of Morocco, my interview with one editor from the editorial board of Humanities Journal. So her perception, she said that it's a consumer product rather than a scholarly reflective tool. In the sense that the hype, the discourse on, for example, ChatGPT was more like related to media and to consumption, to more than to the ethical use of it in scholarly publishing. So on the ethical policies and the ethical debate, she mentioned that they have informal discussions at the journal level, but there is no debates on the national level or with the other institutions like CNRSD, INIT, etc. And she mentioned also the generational gap, like within the editorial board of this journal. And it's very interesting, but because when you want to talk to them about this issue, so there's a kind of rejection. And I did myself, when I wanted to talk with one of the senior editors of this journal, so he was, I don't want to talk about this. Yes, because, yes, it was, there is a kind of anxiety, and fear when you talk about this to people. Yes, and when it comes to authority and role, there is a kind of editorial disorientation. Yes, she said, we are not prepared yet. Editors, in academia and Moroccan academia are not prepared yet to this discussion on the ethical use of AI. And the competition with ChatGPT, she thinks that editors will always do a kind of quality control of what ChatGPT produces. Like, we need them, so they won't be replaced by ChatGPT or any other AI generated. Yes. In the case of South Africa, I've done 3 interviews with a member of an editorial board of Humanities Journal, co-editor of Humanities Journal, and editor-in-chief of Literature Journal. So on the perception, the first editor mentioned that he has limited knowledge of AI and preference for human creativity, and there is a kind of concerns about authenticity, writing. The second one had a strong rejection and dislike of AI because of the bias in AI, human creativity and struggle, writing and struggle. The third one, yes, and he's very, militant. And the third one is also mentioned the kind of limited knowledge about AI. So when it comes to the ethical policies and ethical debates, the first journal, they already adopt the ethical policy of the publisher. Can I say the name of the publisher?
If they're allowed you, did they permit you to say their name?
No. So
okay.
The second one, the second one, editorial board's discussion and meeting, but there is no central agenda. He said that sometimes they take it as a joke. They don't take it seriously. We discuss it, but it's a kind of joke. And the third one, absence of policies at the level of the journal, also the one from the literature. When it comes to authority and agency, the first editor mentioned a kind of epistemic authority in peer review, the risk of outsourcing judgment to AI challenges. You know, we will talk about this later in the discussion, and the limits of AI in meaning making. Also, the second editor mentioned the ethical sensitivity, the need for detection tools, uncertainty about replacement of, we can't replace, he said, because there is also this pleasurable experience of writing that we can't, replace. And the third one expresses a kind of suspicion among peers, because we will suspect, our colleagues. Because if you're an editor and you're looking for a peer reviewer, and your peer reviewer is using ChatGPT to do reports, so it creates a kind of, also suspicion among peers. So, as a conclusion, perceptions of AI in scholarly publishing range from emerging awareness and cautious optimism to concerns about consumerism, limited understanding, and outright rejection. AI ethics in African scholarly publishing is still, at the very embryonic stage, limited to informal journal level debates with little institutional leadership, marked by conservatism, generational gaps, and the absence of clear policies. On the authority, the editors feel a kind of pressure, and they have to navigate rising expectations, the epistemic authority, and the ethical uncertainty in the age of AI. Yeah, I am going to, the ongoing research from this work, from this project, I am trying to finish an op-ed on the geopolitics of AI in Africa scholarly publishing, and a policy brief on the editorial authority and the use of AI in scholarly publishing in Africa. Thank you. Shukran.
Well, thank you, Yousra, and for not just posing the question, but framing it, but also providing us with some preliminary empirical basis to tease out, the questions. I'm going to open it up for questions before I reach out. I knew that Antonadia was going to be the first, and then Marcelo would be the second, and that Hassan would be the third, and that only one needs to go. So if you can allow me, let me start with Oli. So I'll take a series of questions, if you can write, and then it would be great. I'll take the first group of questions before I come back. So let me start with Oli.
But I'm raising the question as a question of how to use it ethically. But there's another ethical question of whether we should be using that or initially. Because I think there's this kind of move to accept things based on the fact that they exist and they're there. And I think it's not just in publishing, but even the university, if you see the kind of policy shift of the university looking out, for example. It's just like, well, I guess that's the world now and you have to adjust. It's just kind of like a capitulation against these technologies that we are seeing, I think, even in international journals. So now, for example, I think there was this on the TNF online, I was seeing some journals saying just write, if you use it, write a brief statement of how you used it. And they will decide whether it's admissible or not. So I think there's a definite tension around the two ethical questions that I think would be interesting to hear more about regarding how to use it versus where they should be used. The second question kind of figures into the conversation regarding study publishing as well.
Okay. Do you want to respond to that before?
Second
So
one?
whether we should be used.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I just will say simply that it will depend on the ethical values of each one as humans, simply. So also, if you are career-driven or if you are passionate about research, and there is also this publish or perish, pressure. You have to deliver. So this technology, can sometimes make things easier, especially when it comes to writing, readability, etc. For people who, for example, don't write in English. And we can talk about it. It's another debate about the polishing of language. But for me, it will depend on the ethical use of it or not using it. It will depend on the values, the ethical values of each one of us. So this is how I see it. Okay,
great. That's a bigger question that we have to deepen. I think it is the quintessential question. Yeah, thank you, Oli. And then let me take the other group, Antonadia, and if you can take the notes.
Depends on each one's values. We reach a certain domain of, everything is possible. But coming back to the analogical time, as an editor, the worst nightmare is to find peer reviews. Usually because people say, we don't have time. And if you have AI, as you briefly mentioned at the end of your presentation, reading the articles. We might have, I'm trying to operate here in a sci-fi mode. We reach a certain work dynamic in as an editor. That reading is done by machines, and what we write as humans might be considered just too unimportant, because this question of authenticity, originality, and creativity is also at stake here. I don't know if it happens to you, but usually I swear to write something. When I publish it, all of a sudden I realize that someone has written something before me, like 20 years ago, sometimes 200 years ago. And also, and how this artificial intelligence can, with the proofs, say that what we are producing is not original at all. So we can think of a future world where just few journalists would be reasonably published, and we would refer just to very few journalists, because they will be the sites where original articles are being definitely published. And the rest, what we write, wouldn't be published because it's never original in itself, you see. So I'm thinking about the politics behind this. It's still, you talk about anxiety, and the fear of losing authority. For me, sorry to be so long, but it doesn't come from AI, but from a previous structure where people from previous structure, where editors and journals, especially in central countries, they have been gatekeepers of knowledge since, even memorial times. So I don't know if there is, I'm just thinking in epistemological terms, if there is something really new here. It's not just the same colonial structure of filtering who comes inside and who stays outside. You know, just yeah. Sorry, I was.
Okay, let's go to Marcelo.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and it's very intriguing actually, and because if I understood well, out of your own research with editors, we know very little, or they know, the editors, they know very little about what AI really does in publishing. Because then you make like ChatGPT, and of course we always, ChatGPT is always this thing, but I don't know, who, and that is my question, because you talked about like editorial authority. Yeah. Important question, like my knowledge of the academic world, most of the editorial work is done for free. Actually, editors are not professionals at all. And that's my question to you, like, how do you understand the role of these editors? If they, because for how long they have been editing a journal, in order to face the AI as a challenge. Because I'm taking my experience from the journals I got to know. We don't get to discuss AI because we have a new editor every 2 years. Because it's free labor, and it's very unprofessional. But at the same time, again, the authority, and I think there's something to do with the editors being the gatekeepers of quality, but also the style of publishing stuff. But my point is, are these editors professionals enough? They get any monetary incentive to know more about AI, or it's just by themselves. It's just that's my point. When you don't know things and you are not paid for that, how come you get to engage with AI? Because there is like the review, but one of the last examples I got from a colleague is that AI is generating references, fake references of real people. And there are real people that are getting to be, if they are being cited for things they have never done in journals that exist. So there is a combination of things. But my point is of the awareness of the editors, the professional awareness of them about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to take
Oh, you take
one or two more, and then just to give you time to finish that. I have Azar. Yes, I have Azar, Mingan, Abna. Oh, sorry. And yes, I've just seen some other hands come up now, but those are the ones I have now, so that you can respond. It gives that time. Yes, Azar.
Scholars or the editors. And my experience with editors who use AI, I also not going to mention journals' names, but it was very interesting to see, like, I mean, those journals are talking about how they started to receive double the papers they used to receive back in the days, you know. But at the same time, now their decision to take that article further for a peer review is becoming so fast, which tells me that it's impossible that you are reading all those articles by itself as an editor. It's definitely the AI that's helping you, to sort. I mean, a type of algorithm, let's not say generative AI, but at least it's a type of algorithm that you are using that's trained on, because it is generative AI and it's trained on large language models. I'll be very scared to have my article to be submitted to such a journal, because I mean, then as you said, it's kind of AI plagiarism, right? And it's also not, there's no regulation for that, They are putting now regulations on authors, but they're not putting regulations on editors and reviewers. Yes. And I think for me, like, yes, you say like human, but I think that human, we can't really think about human again. Be rules and regulations for that, you know, there should be rules, there should be enforcement of particular regulation that we just see.
Yeah, but sometimes even those particular regulations, people won't respect them. So even if, you know, even if you have an AI detector of plagiarism, sometimes they fail to detect plagiarism itself.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is this, one of the editors with whom I spoke, he said from plagiarism to AI-plagiarism. So it's, you can't even detect it. Even the tools, they fail to detect this kind of plagiarism.
I mean,
But
like my experience, the way my paper went through all the segments of the journal, because that segment of the journal, those editors think that my paper is published in that other segment, so they move it to that other segment, and it starts just moving around. And I even forgot about publishing now. I'm interested more in this process. It's very fascinating, you know. And this is because it depends on words that it flags. You know, it flags malaria, my word. So it's not actually for public health, it's probably for malaria pathogen article. And then I find my article was suddenly it's moved to a malaria pathogen paper. It's like, no, I'm not doing research on malaria, like pathogen malaria. I'm actually writing a different aspect, you know. And then you get back the editor telling you, well, your article sounds like an article that goes, it's not scientific enough. It sounds like an article that goes to a journal, like a magazine. Because like, well, because that's not supposed to be, it's not scientific because that's not about science. I'm not more talking about the science. I'm not a millennial, I'm not a biologist. So these are kind of the things that are, I don't know, it's really worrying me. I'm sorry, I cannot tell you people stuff. It's really worrying me, and I just like your perspective. You can comment on that.
Yeah, so great. You don't have to answer to all because you're still here and you need to answer to what you can answer. And then the rest you're going to have to, but I'm taking two more and then you can see what you answer for. Sorry, yes, I saw there's a hand online, but Minga is next on my list. Yeah, and then
so much, Yousra. I think my question is in addition to what has spoken here. And we had a conversation on this topic of AI. So AI is here to stay, whether we like it or not. So people need to know AI is here to stay. And AI enables us to, you know, not just a tool for anything. I think it's back to what I just spoke here about the ethical issues on an editor who's using an AI to an AI. I don't know if you can.
yes.
So what are the ethical implications there? Because I think it's just the same question that Hassan is asking. So we put pressure on authors, but you don't put pressure on the AI. But what are the ethical implications? I don't know if you came across that.
okay, so hold it. There is online, but before I go online, you had the question. Yes.
Yousra, I have two questions. One is similar to Minga's. So many of the editors are suspicious of AI, but you also mentioned that they are checking for AI generated text. So how do they do that? Yeah, but they're also suspicious of it. So how do they check for it? And then, I mean, I also
Suspicion among peers. They suspect their peers. Who
not AI. Okay. But yeah, how do they check for AI? Because we know that the tools aren't foolproof. And then my second question, why did you choose the humanities? Is it only because we're based in the humanities, or because I did interviews with lecturers from around the university, and I found that the lecturers based in the sciences were more open to AI than
Yes.
in the humanities.
And I was supposed to do this, but to choose from each country two editors, STEM and humanities. But because, you know, I have to deliver, so I had to, you know, focus on humanities.
Okay.
Voilà.
Great. Last question.
Yeah.
And then you can decide and say that these are discussions we will be having. Indeed. So we have a question online that is Callistus. There was a question online. Oh, sorry. Okay, great. So, all right. Okay. So that's the question, but you can choose what you want to answer because the time is up and there's so many questions, but I know there's so many answers, but yeah, I think you should select what you want to answer. And then the rest, we can have an ongoing discussion. Yeah.
It's not to Marcelo.
Okay.
Because because when I was talking to one of the editors, he mentioned this situation, this.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, your question has just been posed. Exactly. That's the other one. That's a different person. Oh, okay. Can you
Okay,
pose
Prof.
your question quickly because we just closed? So she's responding. Can you pose your question briefly?
Okay, Prof. Okay, Prof. Thanks immensely. I think the other participants have asked a question related to what I had to ask, but I just wish to find out if scientifically is it advisable to conduct a research or to write a research on let's say AI, and then after you do a humanization of it, and then how is it going to still be scientifically authentic when you humanize your AI? Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now you can decide what you want to tell people.
There was a question about the editors, are they professional enough to deal with AI? So when I was talking to one of the editors from Nigeria, he mentioned this problem of knowledge. And he said that during one of the trainings they did within the journal, he was astonished by the level of how editors, they don't know anything about AI, the landscape of AI. What do we know about it? We only know ChatGPT, Google Bard, AI generative AI, but we don't know much about it. And we can't blame them as well, because the problem of training, as we can talk about it, training editors, workshops. So these things are not available in our context, our African context. So I think, are they professional enough to deal with this? Are they knowledgeable enough to deal with this? Do they have enough, do their infrastructure allow them also to deal with this kind of new challenges? So I think this is one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. And yes, we did it again. We're going to be returning here week after next. Yes, when we meet new colleagues, visiting colleagues will be here for another talk, but you will have that online already with the posters. But thank you. And I think by then you would have traveled back to Rabat and Casablanca. So,